At the beginning of time, the world was in darkness. Now, the first spark fell from the sky, and it fell into a lake. The people on the shores of this lake that were living in darkness, they thought they will start to make a net that they can pull to try to catch this spark. And it will save us and give us light and warmth.
Since ancient times, the people of the North have faced one big threat: the cold. For thousands of years, fire has been the key to their survival. But now the world is changing.
The planet is on fire.
The very thing that kept humans alive, burning stuff, is fueling an existential threat to our way of life. But in Finland, one man believes he's found a solution.
We don't have much time. A decade is the time frame if worst is to be averted.
This story begins in the village of Selkie in eastern Finland. It's a tight-knit community of 300 people. But one day, the local fishermen found their livelihoods suddenly destroyed.
There was a massive environmental discharge of acidic waters that killed all the fish in our river.
But the dead fish were only part of the problem. The acidic discharge had come from a nearby peat field. So this is all peat, basically.
And clay.
Peat and clay. And in its current state, it's emitting greenhouse gases.
Correct.
Peat is formed of decayed vegetation. When dried, it can be burnt like a fossil fuel. For decades, Finland's main peat producer, a company called Vapo, has harvested peat on an industrial scale.
They were given a free hand for over 50 years to ditch and drain these kind of marsh mires and bogs.
As a power source, peat is dirtier than coal. But it gets worse. After it's been harvested, drained peat-lands continue to emit greenhouse gases.
All of this happened without any consultation of the local communities, all across eastern Finland, central Finland, and all the way to the gates of Lapland. The damage is immense.
It's moose hunting season. In the village of Selkie, men gather before dawn. This is an ancient tradition, now with a modern twist.
Even though the rise of technology has made assistance to the hunt, but we still need traditional knowledge.
Can I ask all of you, do you notice the effects of climate change here? Everyone agrees the snowfall comes later, the weather is changing.
More rain, much more wind. We should act much more quicker. The whole nature is on change. I'm personally very worried about it.
It's mid-morning before the dogs pick up the scent of a moose. Thanks to the GPS trackers, the hunters are ready and waiting. A moose crosses the path, but she has a single calf. The hunter holds fire.
It's never a mass slaughter. It's a culture. There is still an understanding of life and death and long traditions of how we have been living sustainably.
But they don't give up. Later that morning, they get their kill. It's a young male. On its coat, parasites from warmer climes. More signs of a changing planet.
Those are the moose flies that are now come because of climate change, and they are now like parasites for the animal. They weren't here when we were young.
The moose will be skinned and butchered, the meat shared out in the community. Guns and GPS trackers aside, in the villages of the north, this kind of hunt goes back thousands of years.
In the northern regions and northern cultures, the way we are interacting with the earth and the cosmos is the hunt. We call it traditional knowledge. And this combined with science can provide wisdom and ethics of how to treat the earth and how to live so that humans are not against nature but with nature.
There's something we haven't told you about Tero Mustonen. He's not just a fisherman. He's also a climate scientist, a lead author for the IPCC, the UN body that advises governments on climate change. When the fish in his river were poisoned, he did something that no one had ever done before. He took Vapo, the peat company, to court and won.
This is the first recorded event in Finnish history where a village won over Vapo and forced them to exit from that village.
Now Mustonen has a new project. The old, dried-out peat fields on the edge of the village, the ones that continue to release carbon into the atmosphere, he and his colleagues are rewilding them, flooding them with water.
Some of those emissions will stop immediately.
As soon as you cover it in water, that's it?
Yes.
Yeah. Eventually, this will become a carbon sink, trapping CO2 from the atmosphere. It's a model that could help the country meet its emissions targets.
In Finland, we have a massive potential for restoration of peatlands and bogs and marsh mires into carbon sinks that are currently degraded.
People often refer to the Amazon rainforest as the lungs of the world. How important are these kind of sites in the north?
They are very precious. All the boreal wetlands and marsh mires extend from the Pacific into Finland and then actually into Canada and further. And they are a global sink.
Mustonen's message has resonated far beyond his village. A recent IPCC report on the rate of warming in the Arctic had a profound effect in Finland. An election earlier this year was dominated by the issue of climate change. Now, a new government has pledged to bring the country's carbon emissions to net zero by 2035, one of the most ambitious targets anywhere in the world and twice as fast as the UK. In Helsinki, people told us two things about that ambitious target. One, it'll be hard to achieve. Two, it's focused minds.
It has been a very good signal for our business world, because they are really thinking that how they can help in cutting down the emissions and having new kind of technologies.
In the capital, they've launched a competition to find new technologies to replace coal. But the new government is an uneasy coalition. It includes the Centre Party, which has historic ties to the peat industry, as well as the Greens, who've long campaigned against the use of fossil fuels. So you legislated no more burning coal by 2029.
Yeah.
Why don't you do the same for peat?
That's a good question. I think we should do it, but it's not in our government program at the moment.
Why not?
Because we didn't have a political agreement on that.
Because what a lot of environmentalists say is that if Finland is going to go carbon neutral in 15 years' time, one of the easiest things to do would be to stop the peat industry. And if Finland can't do that, then maybe achieving net zero by 2035 is going to be difficult.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of peatland in Finland, and the thing is that also there's a lot of areas that is the peat industry is locally quite important.
To find out how important and how powerful, we travelled to the town of Ilomantsi, 300 miles northeast of Helsinki. Here, Vapo, the company that Tero Mustonen took to court, operates a peat-fired heat and power plant.
We cannot stop this country because of emissions. Of course, we are producing certain amount of emissions. Those emissions are decreasing all the time. I think it's not a problem. Problem is somewhere else.
But everyone says the problem is somewhere else.
Yes,
that's the problem.
we have
and that's a recipe for inaction.
You are quite right. But we are the cleanest country in whole Europe at the moment. And we are doing our job better and better every day. But we cannot stop heating our houses. It's impossible.
Apart from his Vapo issue helmet, Mr. Hoskonen wears several other hats. including being a senior MP for the Centre Party, which perhaps helps explain why the new government is still giving the peat industry tax subsidies worth nearly 200 million euros. Let me just ask you one other thing. You were on the council of Vapo.
I was. I'm not anymore.
Until last month. It looks like a conflict of interest.
No, there is no...
You both represent the interests of the company, and you take decisions on licensing on the local council, and you're on the Parliamentary Environment Committee in Helsinki.
But in these cases there is no problem because I have to take care in this municipality that all the people can have warm houses here.
It all comes back to heat. Even Tero Mustonen has to burn something to stay warm. In his log house on the edge of the forest, he's helping to prepare the next report to the IPCC. His recommendations will help shape the world's response in the coming years.
I think it's far worse than what we have been discussing in media. However, there are also actions that can still be taken.
How much time do we have to sort this out?
Once we get into 2030s, 2040s, there will be impacts to the global security and global governance, which will be extremely hard to control. I would give it 8 to 10 years when we really, truly have to do at least two things. One, the emission cuts, and secondly, the land use. We will not be able to stop human-induced climate change anymore. There will be impacts, but at least we will avert the worst or make sure that there is some chance of survival.
In their quest for carbon neutrality, the Finns are facing some tough choices, and they're running out of time. And what about that first spark? The one Mustonen told us about at the beginning. Remember, it fell into a lake, and the villagers were looking for it. But a salmon got there first and swallowed it. So the fishermen had to cooperate to build a special net.
Finally, the fishermen caught the salmon in the net. And with iron gloves, they opened up the salmon. There was the first spark that gave us the fire. For survival, for food, for light, for warmth. The message for these times is that the humans only succeeded by pulling together. That's where all the hope lies. I don't see anything else. We are at a profound crossroads. We are now in the blinding and bright light of either choosing life or the darkness.